Guys, I took a fistful of Tylenol for this one. My pronouns are autism. So we've talked a lot about the male crisis, the collapse of dating, and a lot of people have been asking if there's anything we can do to fix it. A lot of guys have already voted no. They're convinced it's hopeless. The only way out of the collapse is through it because there's no obvious solutions. But that points to an even more hair-raising question. If it could be fixed, how would we even know what to do? I mean, in this case, history isn't much help. I mean, we did look back through the history of how we got here in the timeline of the dating collapse videos, but nothing quite like this has ever happened before. So if it could be fixed, how would we figure out what to do? Well, today we're going to start our search for an answer, and we're going to approach it like a battlefield commander. Before you create a battle plan, you need a battle map. So we're going to take the information we gathered from the timeline videos and map that intel onto the stream of causality. It sounds intimidating. It's not. It's just a map of one thing led to another. And that will serve as our battle map for this because it should give us an idea of what changes we can make at the beginning of the stream of causality to get better results at the end of it. In other words, find the root, change the fruit. In the immortal words of Jeremy Clarkson, how hard could it be? I'm going to kind of speed run through most of the basics and the stuff most of you guys already know as we build our way up to the good stuff. So you're just a normal dude. Congratulations. Society hates you. It wants you to suffer. So they're rejecting a lot of the woke progressive left and they're moving to the right. And as they're doing so, they're seeking. Now, these guys move along and a lot of them are finding faith. They're going back to church. Church attendance for Gen Z men is reportedly going up. And when these guys come in, it's awesome. They finally have peace, rest from all that anxiety and worry and depression that they were feeling before. And it's pretty good for a little while. But then what happens? Oh, wait, what's that? You think, okay, that's not a very big deal, except when you're a single person in most churches today, it's not fun. After a while, it starts to get pretty disheartening, discouraging, and it's painful. You know, this really kind of stinks. If we're honest, most people won't hang out with you if you're single. You're starved for intimacy. If you're a guy, you also feel like there's a lot of favoritism against you. Most churches very soft on the girls. They just pummel and beat the snot out of the guys for every little detail that they get wrong. More people start to see you as just kind of a creep the older you get as a single man. And you start to kind of sense that people are disgusted with you, women especially. It kind of makes you feel like you're being falsely accused all the time. You don't really have much to do or much of a purpose. It's not that there's nothing to do. It's like, yeah, sure, you can join a hospitality team and serve there once a week, but there's no like thing that you do that takes up your life. Like, you know, maybe being married and having kids might. You don't have that day-to-day thing. And you definitely don't receive the level of respect that married people do. Or there's another caste tier on top of that is the people with kids. So there's this 3-stage caste system, and it is not fun to be at the bottom of it. All of that to say that pushes guys towards the dating arena. I mean, whether they want to or not. So what else are you going to do? You're not going to stay single. So they come into the dating arena. They're all full of hope and happy and woohoo. And next step that happens is the guys make an evaluation of the women. This has historically been a fairly loose evaluation. Men are not really that picky about women because most men don't evaluate women on very many criteria. It's mostly just, can she satisfy my desire for intimacy and romantic satisfaction? How does she make me feel, in other words? And for a lot of guys, there's a lot of women that can fit in that role that can provide those things. They're not judging women very much on what those women bring to the table. They're not really looking at the costs involved. They're not looking at the risks involved. They get their sort of romantic googly gaga eyes for a girl, and that's all they need to know. The data reflects this. Men do not have anywhere near as high standards for women as women do for men. So men go through a loose evaluation process, and then they ask women out. Now we enter the sorting filter. Traditionally, women have always been much more strict in their evaluation of men. However, as we saw in the timeline, for the last 60, 70 years, women were actually fairly loose in that evaluation. The overwhelming majority of men for several generations in the West were getting selected in by women. And then what we see is most men move on to this sort of Christianese cultural good life. The gateway into that good life, the top caste of Christian culture, is marriage and family. Once you're in, though, life is great. It's awesome. As someone who was in the bottom caste for the first 36 years of my life and got married not too long ago, I can confirm it's better. It just is better. I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying that to our shame, which will make more sense in a second. But once you're in, a whole bunch of stuff unlocks for you. The respect, people finally start to be like, wow, this is a real human being. You start to have that purpose that like, hey, I've got something to do every day. Now I'm in. Great. Awesome. Life is good. And as long as most men have access to this, you can have a stable society. But like we saw in the history, most young men are not making it in here. Data has been saying for a long time that this group of men, the guys who have access and get in, that number's been shrinking. It's down to about 1/3. Okay, let's apply some logic to this. What changed? Why did the group of men who's being selected in go from being the biggest, like overwhelmingly dominant, to now the smallest group? Well, for one, the economy and the housing market sank and made it impossible for the average man to provide a house, which rules out most men for a lot of women, because for most Christian women, having a house to raise their kids in is not an option that they're willing to live without. Unfortunately, fixing the economy is a little bit beyond the scope of this channel, so we're going to leave that for other channels to deal with. Two, the filter that's sorting men in or out got more strict. Okay, so why did that happen? Well, let's look at what influences this filter. First thing is there's the quality of the man. She does not want to marry a scrub. She's going to depend on him, especially if she's going to have kids. So she needs to know that he is a highly capable man. So she's going to look for success and capability markers. Things like confidence, his level of masculine strength, his abilities, his intelligence, the level of success he's attained already. That is a proof that he will likely succeed in the future. His social skills and social standing, genetics, how he looks, how tall he is. Women judge men based on these traits and characteristics. But hold on, actually, we're talking about Christian women. These are the measures that secular women use for men. Christian women use a different list, don't they? They judge the spiritual quality of the man. And they ignore the worldly attributes. No, they don't. Christian women have two lists. He must first meet the bar for his worldly qualities, and then she will evaluate him for spiritual worthiness. Now, the main narrative right now is that the quality of men has been going down. Let's put some percentages on this arbitrarily to just remind us that this is not black and white, yes, no, in, out, has it, doesn't. It's about amounts and sliding scales. Say guys back in the day had certain percentage marks for these things, and it was a lot higher. And women were like, ooh, hey, yeah, I'll take some of that. But the idea is those numbers went down. So now women are like, ugh, actually, no, thank you. She said, oh. So the theory is that men need to do better. They need to step up and be better and try harder. And if you raise those numbers back up, then more women will accept more men and we'll solve the problem. And we'll play fair. This is a part of the story, as we saw in the timeline. Men have been getting nerfed, largely because they're mostly raised by women now instead of by men. Not sure if I'm allowed to say that, but it is true. They're getting nerfed by a society that favors women. Men are roundly hated and rejected and blamed everywhere they go. Oh, by the way, they're also taught I should have put this in there. They're taught complete lies about the stuff that women want. So they go into this whole arena armed with completely false information about how to navigate it and what they should do and how to attract a woman. So they do completely the wrong things and put the women off. They simp and they're too nice and they're too feminine in the way they approach it. So yes, it is true that the quality of the men has been going down, and that has been affecting women's decisions. They're rejecting men more. But that's not the whole story, is it? Because we have this whole other set of stuff that's influencing women's decisions. She's got her standards and her criteria for the man and her expectations. And back in the day, when this number, the guys who were selected in, back when that was bigger, these numbers were lower. And it's unequivocally true that these numbers have gone way up. So that makes this selection filter more strict. More and more men start to get caught in this sort of loop. pick a girl, like a girl, fall for her, try his best with her, bong, oh, no, sorry, you're out. And then you go back to the start and you pick another girl and oh, bong, and you try again. And you just go in this loop for a while. And eventually you lose heart with that and you just sort of accept your fate and go, you know what? It's just not going to happen for me. On top of that, men are actually starting to get more strict in their evaluation as well, because you're dealing with constantly being rejected and getting your hopes up and then having them dashed again. As guys go through that pain, they start to ask questions about why this is happening. And then they start to hear stories. Because we don't live in the pre-internet era where the people of influence in the church and in society could just protect the information airlock and just say, no, you're just an outlier. It's just God's will that you're single and you just need to accept that. Or, well, yeah, I guess, sorry, you just didn't try hard enough. But we don't live in this totally protected information airlock era anymore. Now, guys can go online and compare their experiences with other guys. And they can hear stories from these guys. See, here's another piece of the puzzle. Even if a man is selected in, a woman can revoke her selection at any time without any cost. The government will see to it that he continues to pay all of her bills, and most of the community, they will support her. So the men who go through divorce, they end up in this bucket as well. And they mix in with these guys and start telling these guys, hey, actually, it's dangerous. And you also have these guys over here who get selected in, but their wives don't treat them particularly well. So they're in this sort of they got selected in, but they're also kind of not in. Life is actually not that great because their wife maybe doesn't respect them very much. And these guys start talking about it too. And then there's all kinds of other sources, red pill, black pill, all these other sources, plenty of people who are willing to explain to them what's happening. And now these guys start to get more strict with their evaluations. Instead of just evaluating the rewards that they get, they start looking at the risks and the costs involved that they weren't looking at before. And they start noticing there's kind of a lot of stuff there. And this is why the older guys don't really understand what's happening very well. See, back in their day, women were of a higher quality. They had better self-control. They had more sympathy and care for the man that they're with. And those women offered a lot more. But over time, that has changed. Girls today, they have all the leverage in relationships, legal, social, emotional, sexual, and they are not held accountable at all for how they use it. And they've proven time and time and again that they are not exactly generous with the way that they use that unaccountable power. They have very little sympathy or care for their husbands because they're kind of told from a young age that they don't need to. They're taught that they are the prize, they are the princess, they are the angel up on the pedestal because that's how everyone treats them. And so they often feel like all of the emotional support and all of the sympathy and all that stuff should flow to them, not from them. They don't have much respect for men either. Women have been taught that they need to have just as much power as men because our cultural narratives are built on the premise that you need to have power in order to be valuable, to be safe, and to have a high quality life. Most conservative Christian churches have agreed with that premise. And so we've oftentimes unknowingly taught women that they should not actually in practice respect men because respecting men and deferring to them puts your power below his, which according to our culture puts your worth below his, makes you less valuable. It puts your security and safety below his, your quality of life below his, because power is what determines all of those things. So we've taught women, respect men as little as you can possibly get away with. Women are almost entirely self-centered. Their demands are unreachably high for almost all except for the top level elite, high performers, high achievers, high IQ, high success rate, high social skill. Only those guys can actually realistically meet those expectations. And in return for that, she doesn't really offer all that much because, again, the world has told her, and we have often agreed, that if a woman has to subserviently offer something to a man, that reduces her power and that reduces her value relative to men. And that's oppressive, so we can't do that. So it's okay for women to offer men nothing. It's wrong for men to ask women to offer them something. That's men being selfish and bad. Men are looking at all that and going, first of all, that doesn't look very safe. They're looking ahead into the future and they're going, you know what? I just don't think that this woman offers enough to be worth risking these high probabilities of encountering these problems. And that's even if I somehow miraculously make it past her incredibly astronomically high standards. It looks an awful lot like if I even do make it in, I'm going to end up down here with these guys. Why? Why do that? Of the 2/3 of men who are not in any kind of romantic relationship, half of them have stopped looking. And once these guys get stuck in this box, we don't treat them all that well. Because if you're one of the insider Christians, right, you're in the club, they see what's going on. But their reaction to it, they focus mostly on two places. They focus on this, the quality of the men, and the standards that the men's have. Guys, it is 12:17 a.m. I've been awake for too long. Send help. And so they come down with an absolute hammer on the men. How could you say no to our sweet, absolutely wonderful angels? Obviously, it's because you're too lazy, your standards are too high, you just hate women, or fill in the blank reason. And these women come complaining. These are the attractive men's again. Help. The attractive men are the only ones who are real people in her perception. These guys are absolutely invisible to her. So as far as she's concerned, this is all men. So she comes to the people with influence and she goes, hey, these men, they're so bad. They're treating me poorly. They're horrible to me. They won't ask me out. It's their fault that dating is breaking down. And of course, who do they believe? So when women complain about how they're getting treated by the playboys up in the top 3 to 5%, that easily makes it into the information airlock. Plus, you have all these other narratives up here. If you believe that romance is just a random chance, that doesn't matter. If you get rejected a lot, just keep going and eventually you'll get a win. Except that it's, not random. Women all want the same things. But if you believe that it is and that it's just a matter of how many times you try, yeah, it would make sense to vilify the guys who quit. And that's not even the worst of it for most of them. Because if you're one of these guys, you got sorted out and you're stuck there, you have to watch the guys who got sorted in live that good life without you. And then you have to listen to them lecture you about why they think you failed, why they think you suck, why they think everything that's happening right now is your fault. And then if you speak up about how frustrating it is that you have to take those beatings while you're watching everyone else have that good life that you don't get access to, you then have to listen to them lecture you about how you're being selfish and your faith isn't good enough. You just have to accept that it's just not God's will for you to have that good life that the people lecturing you get to enjoy. We punch them in the gut repeatedly. And then when they try to get away from our fists, we say, see, you just don't love Jesus enough. You're not willing to endure that suffering of singleness and the low tier, low respect that we give you. Obviously, you just don't love him enough and you have idols that you need to deal with. Probably somebody that has some idols here. May or may not be them. We'll see. We treat these guys like garbage and they don't stay here in this spot of just like, I'm in the bottom caste of the church. I can't get past this, the constant rejection. Even if I did, it doesn't look like it's worth it. So I'm just stuck here being treated like garbage and constantly being blamed and being the low tier, low respect, nobody listens to you. Just worm. Eventually, guys just go, you know what? I thought this place was going to be better than the rest of the world. They told me that I would thrive here, but I'm not. They told me that they were against feminism, but they're doing the exact same things and showing the exact same favoritism to women and against me that feminists do. They treat me the same way. Why am I here? They get frustrated and they move on down the line. As the friction gets worse, they start to realize, hey, that social contract, that idea that people who put in effort get rewarded, and that's what determines what you get in life. These guys start to realize that contract is void and they're going to have to get used to being excluded and disrespected, having no real everyday purpose for their lives, the intimacy frustration and loneliness and the commands God wove into their bones that are being thwarted. You have no incentive to conserve the current structure and system because it's very much not working for you. They have no hope that it's ever going to change or get any better. And because dating has completely broken down, there are no families being formed. All that stuff leads to obliteration of social cohesion. And then you end up at the end game. Men go, screw it. I quit. And they exit society, they exit institutions, they exit church. They just sort of are watching from the sidelines, oftentimes rooting for the collapse of the world. I see comments from these guys saying, you know what? Screw it. Let it fall. Let it burn. It's too far gone to save. And I will not have a shot at a decent, normal life while this thing is still standing. Let it fall. And then maybe I'll have a chance to build something out of the rubble. And you have these guys who aren't just rooting from the sidelines. You have guys actively participating and trying to speed up the collapse. You see the insanity that we're starting to see now. This is why I say that things like the LGB rainbow or the political battlefield, this is why I call those secondary battlefields, because those are a symptom of this. Men who are able to get a decent woman and get selected into the good life, they do not do this. The guys up here, they have grounding forces and incentives that keep them away from that and actually make them want to oppose that. So that's the part of the story most of you are familiar with already. So now it's time to take another fistful of Tylenol and sniff out the roots of this.
Sniff them out like a retarded truffle pig.
And let's start with the ladies' side of the equation first, because so far, we don't know why this is happening yet. How did all these risk numbers go up so high? Well, both of these things, a woman's standards, her expectations for men, and the way she treats men, all of that stuff comes from her core story, what she believes about herself, who she is, how the world works, who other people are, what she deserves and should expect from them, all of that stuff. Now, for these women, their core story is formed by a bunch of things. The culture that you grow up in informs you about how the world works and your place in it. Your family of origin, how you're treated as you grow up, same thing. The institutional teaching you receive at school, at church, how you're treated there. Things like discipline and accountability. What the heck is a merdia? Media, the content and stuff that you consume. All of that stuff feeds into your perception of who you are and what you deserve and how things work. Your understanding of who men are, what they owe you. All of that comes from your core story. If you've never had any discipline or accountability, for example, and the media you consume tells you that you are the princess and you are the prize and you deserve the best of everything, well, yeah, that's going to affect what you demand and what you develop as far as what you offer. So yeah, core story determines this stuff. But what's causally upstream of her core story? Well, could it be that we live in a society that favors women? That feminism really did win. And it has trained us to prefer women, to give them better treatment. We've been trained to appease women and to appease their feelings and emotions. Women constantly receive unearned praise, love, and affection and adoration. We fear women. Because think about it. How scared are most men to criticize women for anything? Most Christian men would never dream of saying the stuff that I'm saying right now because they are terrified of the response that they'll get from women. And as a result of that fear, we coddle women and appease them constantly. And could it be that we as Christians have bought into a lot of these narratives and that has formed these ladies' core story in a way that's detrimental to them because it allows their sinful flesh to increase and to grow without any check or balance against it, and to be delusional about themselves and cause this situation where this sorting filter gets too strict and men cannot, even if they do their best, get in to the good life. They have no access to it. And if this is true, this would also make sense with what the narratives are inside the airlock. These things help to justify the favoritism, and these things feed into the lady's core story as well. It also provides insulation, because think about it this way. If it is all about your individual effort, or it's just God's choice whether or not you get selected in or not, well, if I made it, I don't have any responsibility to you. It's all about your effort. You just need to try harder. And that's got nothing to do with me. And it's up to God too. So that's doubled nothing to do with me. So if these guys aren't making it in, not my problem. That's theirs to fix. What do all of those narratives have in common? They insulate the people on the inside from any responsibility to help the people on the outside. Like, say, for example, if the filter gets too strict and men aren't able to get in, well, the people who are on the inside, who are interacting with these women, or maybe have positions of authority in the church who could influence this, don't feel any obligation to do that for the men who are getting stuck on the outside, because it's just their individual effort wasn't good enough. They just didn't try hard enough. They didn't faith hard enough. And of course, it doesn't help that the left has absolutely weaponized the entire notion of collective responsibility and structural problems. You can't talk about external factors or structural problems with conservatives today because that's enemy speak. So let's try to take it down one layer deeper. Let's find the root of this. One thing that would make sense is worship. So yeah, we could change some of this stuff. No one is going to, because at the root of it, popular culture, even among Christians, worships and favors women, and they worship their lifestyle. Because again, it's awesome. Why wouldn't you? And if they were to change this might not be so pleasant for them anymore. Because guess who you run afoul of if you stop favoring women? If you start to hold them accountable for their behavior, if you start putting in checks and balances against the leverage that they have. Imagine if we did start holding women accountable for all that stuff. How do you think they'd react? Not kindly. And so for the guys on the inside, yeah, a lot of the peace and happiness and contentment that you get to experience on the inside of here, yeah, that peace gets woken up very loudly by some very angry ladies who are upset that you made them look bad. And so now they're going to do everything in their power to make you miserable until you stop, even if what you're saying is true, and even if they do need the accountability. So of course, yeah, if you worship this, your peace and your comfort and the good life that you have on the inside, you are not going to want to analyze any of these worldviews, change any of this favoritism, because it would lead to you losing the thing that you worship. So I'm going to do something really quick. This is going to point us in the direction we need to go to fix these problems. So this is our heat map of causally significant influences. Let's say it that way. We can see there's kind of three branches to this: the men's side, the singleness struggle itself, and the women's side. On the men's side of things, yeah, men's standards are a part of it, what men want, and men's quality, what they bring to the table. The fact that men are getting nerfed. So we can look there. On the women's side, we have women's standards and their decrease in quality, their core story formation, all the things that feed into that. And at the root of roots, I would suggest, is worship. Now, immediately a couple of things jump off the page. You could skip all of this trouble, all of these things, if this wasn't here. If single men could live a good, content, happy life where they're respected, they're valued, they're supported equally, if there was a way for them to somehow receive the level of intimacy that you generally only get in marriage, then you could get around this. It just skips the whole marriage and family entry gate and you get in. So option one is you could take marriage and family off of its current pedestal, get rid of the caste system, or probably better way to phrase it, elevate single men so that they have just as good of a life and they receive just as much. It's not that I want to tear marriage and family down. I'm married. I have a kid on the way. It's not like I want to bring that down for me. No, what I'm saying is we could elevate singleness to where it's just as viable in a genuine, tangible, day-to-day way. That's not super realistic, is it? Let's just be honest with ourselves. First of all, this is not how human beings are built. God did not design them to be alone. That's why God made the woman in the first place. So realistically, option number one, not great. We do need to do more for single people, because also realistically, I don't think we're going to be able to actually fix this totally anytime soon. We do need to find ways to make singleness more viable. However, that just isn't going to cut it for most guys because they are not called to singleness. The second thing that jumps off the page is that only one of these branches really gets any attention at all right now. That's, of course, the men's side. Men, you need to do better. Men, you need to stop with this. Men, you need to repent of that. Men, you need to bring your standards down. It doesn't matter that women are the ones with the insane delusional standards and yours are actually pretty normal. You are the one who needs to lower your standards. Men, you are the one who's not doing well enough. It doesn't matter how high her standards are. You are responsible to meet them, and that is it. End of story. we can keep absolutely blasting them and keep losing them. Sure, there are some unhealthy roots up here with the men, but it is the only part of the causal stream we're putting any effort into right now. And it's not producing significant improvements. Because let's be honest, men are not the ones who make the decision. They are not the filter. She is. And it looks like we are going to have to address the uncomfortable side of this causal stream, because it is so painful and discouraging and untenable to be single in the church. Women have effectively become the filter that decides if men stay in the church or not. And that filter has become incredibly strict. Healthy roots bear healthy fruit. This is absolutely not a healthy fruit. So if we want to deal with this bad fruit, we need to deal with women's standards and expectations. We need to deal with the way that they treat men, the risks that they pose. We need to put in counterbalances against the leverage they have over men. We need to get back to real accountability for women. We need to deal with the core story that women have that leads them to feel like this is necessary and correct. We need to deal with our narratives, the stuff that makes us feel like women are untouchable, that they never make any mistakes, they do nothing wrong, the preferential treatment that we show them, the favoritism we show them. And we need to deal with the root that leads to all of this fruit, what we worship. We need to stop worshiping women, stop worshiping our conservative, in-crowd, good life, get back to worshiping the holy, eternal God of the universe and nothing else. Then we need to take responsibility for what we caused, clean up our mess. So this is the map. These are the 3 areas that we can work on. We're going to look at these pieces more in depth as we go over the next few videos. We're going to try to see if we can brainstorm and come up with some ways to solve these problems. Or potentially, how do we build a new structure entirely? What does that look like? And to be fair, we're still going to look at some stuff that we as men can do better, because I'm going to hold you guys to a high standard. And if we want to tell anyone who's on the inside that, hey, you guys really need to help us out, then guys do need to be above reproach. If you are a guy that's doing nothing but watching P-word and playing video games and you are not developing yourself at all, no one is going to respect your complaints and they're not going to lift a finger to help you. And honestly, rightfully so, until you have first made yourself above reproach and done your best to make sure that it really truly is about what's happening on the ladies' side of the causal stream. Anyways, that's all I got. Till the next one, stay weird and get out of here. Peace.